All right, let's jump right into this explainer. We are looking at what might literally be the ultimate geographical paradox on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz. Think about it. This is a place where mind-boggling global stakes and constant, high-alert military tension crash right into ancient, totally undisturbed peace. It's one of the most hyper-monitored stretches of water on Earth, and yet it holds these incredible secrets that almost everyone completely overlooks.
So, here's the big question. How in the world does a tiny 3-kilometer-wide channel have anything to do with the stability of the entire global economy? Well, understanding this claustrophobic little choke point is absolutely crucial. It's literally the key to making sense of global energy markets. When you really step back and look at the sheer massive scale of international trade, it's kind of hard to believe that so much of it hangs by a thread, or rather, relies on a corridor of water you could almost throw a rock across.
To put that into perspective, just look at this number, 21%. A staggering 21% of all the oil consumed globally passes right through this one tiny gate. That's huge. We aren't just talking about a busy shipping lane here. This is the actual beating pulse of the global economy. What happens in this tiny stretch of water dictates energy prices and market stability for literally everyone.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to kick things off with geography as global leverage, then move into the 21% lifeline and the architecture of pressure. After that, we'll shift gears a bit to look at ancient ships and winds, explore some geology, salt, and color, and wrap up with the keepers of Kumza. Let's get into it.
Starting off with Part 1, Geography as Global Leverage, or as I like to think of it, the mathematical equation of tension. Let's see how physical space literally becomes geopolitical power.
If you ever needed a textbook example of a choke point, well, this is it. Because the space is just so restricted, every single movement of these massive supertankers is completely predictable. And you know geopolitics. Predictability immediately invites intense, non-stop surveillance. Literally every single ship going in or out of the Persian Gulf is watched, calculated, and tracked to the absolute meter.
The real kicker here is the strict, unforgiving geometry. Sure, the strait is 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest, but the actual usable shipping lanes, they're constrained to just 3 kilometers inbound and 3 kilometers outbound, with just a tiny little buffer in between. That bottleneck forces some of the most valuable cargo on the planet into these highly disciplined and honestly incredibly vulnerable single-file lines. Moving right along to Section 2, the 21% lifeline. Let's really look at the sheer volume of energy that relies on these exact, narrow coordinates to keep the world running. We know the global economy operates on just impossibly vast networks, but an enormous chunk of its fuel literally depends on this single, fragile passage staying open. In 2024 alone, roughly 20 million barrels of oil move through here every single day. Every single day. Add to that a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas trade. Because it's all so concentrated, a delay here isn't just a traffic jam. It sends immediate shockwaves across global oil prices, hitting refineries and financial centers thousands of miles away. And it's really interesting to see exactly who is relying on this lifeline. More than 70% of that crude oil is heading straight for Asian economies. That makes the Strait of Hormuz a massive, absolutely core national security issue for nations like China, Japan, and India. Their entire industrial engines run on the energy squeezing through this tiny 3-kilometer lane. Which brings us to Section 3, the architecture of pressure. Because, when you have that much wealth flowing through such a tiny, cramped space, heavy militarization just becomes geographic logic. And you can see that logic play out perfectly across the water. We've got two very different strategic postures staring each other down. Up on the northern shore, Iran has fast attack crafts, drone surveillance, and coastal missile batteries that can reach well over 100 kilometers out. That easily covers the entire corridor. Then, down on the southern shore, Oman plays the role of the coordinating eye. They've got this massive radar station perched 2,000 meters high on Jebel Harim, managing a super strict traffic separation scheme. It's essentially a hyper-monitored, incredibly high-stakes game of chess. The tension is just palpable. There are stories of American and Iranian sailors passing through this trigger point who felt like gun barrels were pointed directly at them from both sides at all times. Warships and patrol boats literally sail so close to each other that crews can see faces through their binoculars. It's a field of such precise calculation that even one tiny misstep could spark a global crisis. But, and this is where things get really fascinating, let's move to Section 4, Ancient Ships and Winds.
right in the middle of this modern, high-tech standoff, we find something completely unexpected. Long before anyone was worrying about radar and anti-ship missiles, this exact strait was guarded by thick stone walls and tall, wind-catching towers. The 16th century Portuguese Fort of Hormuz, which is built out of this stunning red earth and coral stone, used to guard the super lucrative spice and silk routes. And just nearby on Keshm Island, in the old city of Laft, they built these beautiful, slender wind towers centuries ago just to pull cool sea air down into the hot, sun-baked houses. This ancient, peaceful reality has quietly sat there, just watching empires rise and fall.
And the craziest part? It isn't just history. Right now, right next to those tense shipping lanes, the UNESCO-recognized tradition of building Iranian lenge boats completely by hand is still going strong. Shipbuilders are out there curving thick wooden beams upward like ribs, shaping planks with saws and hammers with just amazing quiet precision, and tying ropes to lock it all in before any metal goes in. It's this beautiful display of human endurance, completely unfazed by the heavily armed patrol crafts zipping by just offshore.
All right, shifting to Section 5, Geology, Salt, and Color. Because beyond all the human drama, this region holds some geological wonders that are just as wild as the geopolitics. It is so cool to see how the Earth itself sculpted this landscape. It's actually the Middle East's first UNESCO geopark. On Hormuz Island, you've got Rainbow Valley, literally painted crimson, gold, and orange by iron oxide and sulfur. Underground, there are massive salt caves forming these glowing crystal labyrinths. Across the water in Oman, you have the Arabian fjords, these sheer ancient limestone cliffs dropping straight into bright turquoise water. And get this, high up on Jebel Harim, you can actually find prehistoric oceanic fossils sitting 2,000 meters above sea level. No way, right? Speaking of Jebel Harim, when you look closely at those silent rocky slopes, you see something amazing. Even though it feels incredibly harsh and windswept, those desert mountains are hiding these fragile, beautiful ecosystems. They quietly sustain agile mountain goats, the Arabian tar, along with desert foxes and Egyptian vultures riding the thermals. Life just finds a way to survive here, and it does so precisely because it is so incredibly isolated. Which brings us to our final section, the Keepers of Kumsa. We're going to look at human life right on the very, very edge of the strait. Tucked way up into the northern tip of Oman's Masandam Peninsula is Kumsa. It is this ridiculously remote fishing village that is entirely cut off by towering, jagged cliffs. You literally can only get there by boat. And out there, life just moves to the gentle rhythm of the tides. You have wooden boats resting on the sand and ancient traditions that are completely insulated from all the massive, ultra-modern cities springing up across the rest of the Gulf. Because they are so isolated, they've preserved something truly special, their language. The people here speak Kumsari. It's a highly unique, super rare language found practically nowhere else on Earth. It was actually born out of centuries of maritime trade flowing through the strait, so it's this crazy blend of Persian, Arabic, and older regional dialects. It's like a living artifact, you know? A language carried down through generations by the sea and the mountains, just totally untouched by the stress and military posturing happening literally a few miles away. So the paradox of this whole geography becomes incredibly clear. The exact same stretch of water carrying 21% of the world's oil, heavily armed patrol boats, and the entire weight of the global economy also holds luminous salt caves, vibrant mineral valleys, and a language frozen in time. It's a narrow passage that is, quite literally, a global time bomb, and simultaneously a quiet witness to time. So I'll leave you with this to ponder. As global demands push harder and harder against those ancient shores, which force is ultimately going to define the future of the Strait of Hormuz? When geography is this tightly compressed, every single variable is magnified. Thank you so much for joining me to look beyond the daily headlines and really explore the true, beautiful, and volatile complexity of this incredible choke point. Catch you next time.